formula shortage. So if you have turned on the TV or social media, you have heard about the formula shortage, which is why we're live with Dr. Hemm, who is a pediatrician at LifeBridge Health. So welcome, Dr. Hemm. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for asking me. This is quite a shortage we're having, and I know that a lot of parents are really having trouble finding enough food for their baby, and it's really pretty scary.
Yeah, it is scary. And I'll disclose from the beginning that I am a fairly new mom. I have a 5-month-old, so I'm familiar with the formula shortage and just seeing the issues that everybody is having. It's very scary for parents and caregivers. So we do want to talk about some of the questions that we've been seeing, and I'm sure you've been getting in your office as well from parents calling. But one of the first ones, and I just also want to remind people, if you're watching us live or even afterwards, please feel free to add your questions in the comment section below, and I'm going to be on my phone monitoring those. So one of the first questions or comments or concerns that we keep seeing and hearing is the diluting of formula. So can you talk a little bit about why this is dangerous and not a good option for parents?
Well, the main reason that it's not a good option is because the kidneys and the baby's bodies in general are just not able to deal with different concentrations than what the formula is made at. And it can be an immediate problem for their sodium and other salts and so on that they have in their blood. And it can be very dangerous. It can even be fatal and kill them. From a long-term standpoint, for all that they're needing the calories for and all of those other nutrients also, they would just be missing out on a number of those. So even as a short-term answer, it's really not a good one because short-term it can cause a problem.
Okay, great. Thank you for that answer. Another concern or question we keep seeing and hearing is the homemade formula. So the comments that you see, and we've seen them even on, we shared a story earlier this week on social media, is that people say, my mother or my aunt survived off of homemade formula. Why is it so dangerous? And what advice do you have for parents on this?
I think this is really a tricky one because there are some things that we have been doing in pediatrics for many generations, but this very high quality formula is something that hasn't been around longer than some of the people who are still living. And so much in the same way that car seats and sleeping on their backs to sleep has been a culture change. This is a culture change too. I know that I went home and looked it up in the Spock book that my mother used when I was a child. We just know that those things don't have the minerals, the calories, the right proportion of the fats and the carbohydrates and the protein that we really want a developing body, especially a developing brain, to have. And there just isn't a way, in addition, to make sure that all of those different things that would be put in it are safe in and of themselves. So they're not providing the right mix of stuff, but they also could be ultimately dangerous.
Okay, great. If you are just tuning in, we are live with Dr. Stephanie Hemm, who is LifeBridge Health pediatrician, and we are talking about the formula shortage. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the comment section below. And if you're not watching this live and you do have a question, you can send us a direct message or ask it in the comment section below. We'll make sure that either Dr. Hemm or one of our other healthcare providers is able to answer that for you and get in touch with you. So we were just talking about the homemade formulas and why you really shouldn't do that. But let's say you really are having trouble finding your formula, which it's happening. Can you safely switch the formula? And maybe depending on what the baby's issues were and why they were on a specific formula, do some babies outgrow certain issues? And how can you just safely do this without just trying different formulas for no reason?
So I think that's a kind of a multi-tiered question because there are several categories of babies that we're talking about there. So there's some babies who might be on the standard Similac or the standard Infamil and then not be able to find that. Switching between Infamil, Similac, the store brand, anything that's sold on the shelves here in the United States has to meet all the rigorous guidelines. So switching between those is not an issue at all. Medically, it is not an issue for the baby. Sometimes different formulas will agree with babies in different ways, just as we all have different foods that we seem to process differently. But it's not going to be dangerous. Now, that's the category of baby who has done fine on the formula that they're on. They've never needed to switch. They've never been worried that there were any food allergies or any insensitivities or anything like that. So that next category then is the category of babies where perhaps those regular formulas, the standard, pro-sensitive, et cetera, just didn't agree with the baby. So there wasn't anything medically that there was a worry about an allergy. There was a worry about, not tolerating the formula because of some medical reason that could be dangerous. And in those cases, again, switching in between the different brands, the idea of Coke versus Pepsi, switching in between the different brands, different tastes and so on, but not a dangerous thing. And then we have the third category of patient. And this is the one where you really need to reach out to your pediatrician. Unfortunately, these are some of the formulas that it's my understanding are in the very shortest supply and the very hardest to find. I am on a Facebook group with 70,000 physician moms, and the things that are being put on there in terms of even GI offices just don't have those formulas. That's when you really need to call your pediatrician, because sometimes babies do outgrow some of those things. Usually we have a very prescribed path for when we're going to kind of think that they are, but it might be worth it to check in with them and see if there would be any other options for them besides that one formula that they're in.
Okay. Now for the baby who is on a standard formula and they're just switching brands or, maybe going from Enfamil or Similac to a generic brand, how can a parent switch? Can they just start, with the new formula, or should they do it gradually? What advice do you have there?
Some of it kind of depends on if you know your baby. Some babies are going to be pretty particular and some babies are not going to care. So if you have found that your baby might like things a little bit more routine and so on, go slowly. Mix a little bit at a time. So, 10%, 90%, 20%, 80%, etc. What I usually say in cases like that is mix up both the formulas ahead of time and then mix the liquid formulas so that you're able to mix them safely so that you get the right dilution. But for some babies, there's some really laid back babies who are like, whatever, just try them on a bottle. If you want to do it as a small snack bottle, you're going to be fine.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, every baby is so different, and some take any formula and don't care, and others are very particular. So it's definitely interesting. A lot of experimenting.
Especially babies who have come from the same mother. I usually find that you only get one easy baby. So that was true with me.
That's funny. Well, mine is easy, and I'm lucky. He's on Nutramigen and has no problems with it. And so we're lucky there. But all right, another question that we've been seeing is about a food scale. So how, should they be measuring?
Here, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble here.
No, you're fine. You're perfect. You're in the screen now.
I'm on a moving cart.
No, you're fine. Should parents be measuring how much formula that they're putting in by using a food scale to make sure that they're not doing too much or too little? Because nobody wants to waste any formula right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be wrong to do, but I'm not sure that it's really adding that much in terms of the assistance and so on. There are a lot of things that we do in pediatrics that we talk about that sometimes just add anxiety to parents. And in my opinion, kind of weighing the formula, if you're using the scoop and you're doing it the way that it's recommended, then you're probably going to be okay. I think too, sometimes that gives folks a real sense that if they do it just just perfectly according to the package, then maybe they will use a little bit less. I think it's going to be negligible. So I probably wouldn't spend that extra time. But I don't know too much more about it if there were other concerns, but that's how it strikes me hearing about it.
Okay. No, I think that's helpful. And you talked a little bit just now about the anxiety that might give added anxiety to parents who are already pretty anxious about this, formula scare. Do you have any advice for parents who, are not sure how much they should have on hand? Should you keep buying it every time they see it? Or, my theory just yesterday was, I have enough right now, I should let other parents buy it. But then this morning I wake up, I feel like I should buy more just because I just saw it, So what advice do you have for parents struggling with that?
So
the internal
keeping a little bit of a
sharing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of anxiety. You don't want to hoard it from other parents who are certainly in the same boat, but you also don't want your child to go without. It seems to me that something like a 2-week supply would be very reasonable. So each time that you go and you see a little bit more, you could buy a couple of cans. But only be doing that every once or twice a week, kind of thing.
Right.
But if you are stockpiling more than about 2 weeks, you probably, I think from the timing and where we can find things and so on, 2 weeks sounds like a reasonable amount. That you have a good solid week, plus you've got a little bit of wiggle room. So if you see some in the next week or so, add to your stash. Yeah, it's similar to the toilet paper, right?
Right. It is. A little scarier, of course, because it's, we really
quite a bit scarier. Absolutely, Megan.
But it is the same concept where people are panicking and stocking up.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about, we're seeing in these Facebook groups, and you might be seeing in some that you belong to, people are buying and selling breast milk that is not coming from a donor bank. So why is this not a good idea? Even though it sounds like a great idea because people are, practically giving it away, but what are some of the concerns from a medical perspective?
So I think that it is lovely that some people have more milk than they need and want to share it. I do have to encourage people to never use breast milk that would even come from a relative. You just aren't privy to their medical history and infectious diseases and so on that moms have, different ways that the milk may have been stored or not stored. You just don't have all the data. And it's so easy to get that milk contaminated either from something in the environment or from something in the mom's body, that it just in the long run is very risky and is going to end up hurting your baby significantly.
No, I think that's great. And handling it too. You don't know how it's been stored and all of that.
Yeah.
Transferring, which.
Right, exactly. So you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is similar, of course.
Go ahead.
There's a delay. I'm sorry. I'm not.
That's okay. I know. But this is, you and I talked this morning on the phone a little bit about ordering. Everyone's been saying on Amazon that you can change your location from US to Canada and have formula shipped. And one of your concerns, which I just mentioned for the breast milk, was the handling of it. So we don't know how it's getting from Canada to the US. It could take weeks. Or even longer, or maybe never show up, and you don't know the temperature control. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, I think that was a really good point you made.
Yeah, so I think that this can apply to both areas. So both the formula from Canada and then the European formula brands. We know that the European formulas are great. What we don't know is that the transport in between is great. So that's the reason for the FDA approval. I think that when I was first looking into this too, I have been somewhat concerned because as far as the science goes for the formula in Europe or in Canada, I think it would be fine. But there is that transportation issue. So we don't know how much heat it's been exposed to and other conditions that may make it less safe for the babies. And so that's the reason. Now, I do know that the FDA is expediting some things so that perhaps they can work on transporting and importing some of the formula from Europe in a safe manner. And hopefully that will be something that will come to fruition here in the next couple of weeks. But for that reason, you just can't trust exactly where it's been. And so for the same reason that you can't trust exactly where that express breast milk has been, I just think that you might be risking more damage and more harm to your baby than is a good idea.
Yeah, which is definitely not what parents want who are out there looking for formula and looking for alternatives. You don't want to any added danger there. So another question that we've been seeing is, so obviously babies are on formula for a variety of ages from birth up to 12 months. And at some point you start introducing food. So should anyone be talking to their pediatrician about increasing food and decreasing formula during this shortage?
I think that those are really good questions to ask your pediatrician, because that a lot of that can be very baby specific for the babies on any of the formulas. And certainly the under 6 month crowd and the under 4 month crowd in particular is really not one where I would ever recommend using foodstuffs instead. But
Okay.
once you hit 6 months and 9 months, it's certainly worth it to have a conversation with your pediatrician, because you are able to get a lot of those nutrients from other sources. And we have recommendations that we make, but that's based on a great formula supply. And I think that there are probably other ways to get those nutrients, but it's going to be baby specific. Excuse me.
Okay, no, that's good information. And just another reason why it's important to have a pediatrician that you trust and that you feel like you can call to ask these questions, because you know your baby best, but then your pediatrician needs to be very familiar with the prior history and how everybody can kind of work together during this formula care. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and I should add that Dr. Hemm is accepting new patients. So if you are looking for a pediatrician, or if you're an expectant mom looking for a pediatrician, I will put your office contact information in the comments section below so that everybody can call you. But thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else, any other advice or anything you want to add for parents or caregivers right now?
The only other thing that I'm really wondering about, and hopefully I can find out the answer here soon and we can post it, is how this is handled for the babies who receive WIC, or women and infants and children. And so I hope to be able to figure that out. I've called them a couple of times, but understandably they haven't been able to answer the phone, I guess, due to myriad of calls.
I'm sure receiving an influx of calls. So if we learn more, we'll certainly post that in the comment section below. And if we get any other updated information that we want to share with everybody, we will add that to the comment section as well, because I think it's important, to share reliable information, because everybody's Googling it and just trying to find answers. I know I am, and the news is continuously updating us of what's going on. So hopefully in the next few days and weeks, things will certainly start to improve.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Hemm, for your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.